Bonjour French 1. This is your section 1.1 video all about asking and telling how you are doing. Before we get started, I wanted to point out the whole difference between informal and formal language again, because you'll see that several of these questions are labeled as being the formal or informal way of asking those questions. If you want to jot down the notes about that information again, you can, although we've already taken it on a separate set of notes, so it's your call whether you want to add these additional notes or not. But the bottom line is, in the French language, there are two different ways of talking to people based on how familiar you are with them. If it's somebody that's around your own age that you're pretty familiar with, or a family member, even if they're an adult, if they're family and you feel pretty close to them, then you use informal language. If, however, the person you're talking to is somebody that you don't know very well, usually it's adults that you're not related to, things like the doctor, the cashier at the grocery store, your teachers, those adults that you're not related to, you want to speak formally to. In the English language, we use sometimes certain language with our friends that we don't necessarily use when we're talking to our doctors or our teachers. It's the same kind of idea, but they actually have official grammar rules and official words that get used with one group and not the other. So kind of be aware of that. Keep in mind as you're taking your notes that you definitely have to write down the words that are on the line with the yellow background, because those are your French words or phrases. The ones that are in parentheses with the green background, however, are optional. Those are your explanations for how to pronounce the words that are on the line, and it's your choice whether you think that they will be helpful and you'd like to write them down or not. Also keep in mind as we're going through these that I will pause after I say each one so that you have a moment to repeat after me. It's a best practice to go ahead and do that, because then, as I like to say, you get the total vocab experience of seeing it, hearing it, saying it, and writing it all at one time. So let's go ahead and get started. Two different ways of saying how it's going. They're both informal, but one of them slightly shorter than the other. The first is "Comment ça va?" and the second is just "Ça va?" If, however, you're speaking to somebody formally, an adult that you're not necessarily related to or as familiar with, then you want to use the formal form, which would be "Comment allez-vous?" Now these two phrases for "and you" are on here because if somebody else asks you how you're doing, instead of having to answer and then repeat back "and how are you doing," a lot of times we just say "and what about you?" So this just kind of keeps your conversation a little bit more real life and a little bit simpler than always having to repeat back the full question. There are two different ways though. If you're saying "and you" to somebody that you're really familiar with, a friend, somebody younger than you, a family member, then you say "et toi?" If, however, you're talking to somebody that you need to speak formally with because you're not as familiar with them, you would say "et vous?" Either way, they both mean "and you." On the phrases for how to answer if you are doing well, we have three different choices here, including the word for just plain old well or good, which is bien. If you want to make it very well, then it's très bien. And if you want to say it's going well, ça va bien. We also have three different ways of saying if you're just doing okay. It's kind of weird. The word ça va literally means is it going? So you can use it as a question, ça va, it's going, and you can also use it as an answer and say ça va, it's going, which is basically a way of saying that things are fine. So your first choice here is ça va, and then you would of course be able to say merci, which you know from class is thank you, and you could really use merci with any of these. You could say I'm doing well, thanks, and you can kind of combine them however you'd like. It just happens to be on your notes with this particular answer this time. If you want to say that you're doing not bad, as in not good, not bad, somewhere in the middle, you are pas mal. And if you're doing so-so, you're doing plus ou moins. Finally, if you're having a no good, very bad, terrible, horrible day, you want to say that you're doing not too well, which in French is pas très bien. Don't forget to take a moment to do the wrapping up section. It only takes a second and it helps you get your full credit on your homework. Remember, you either ask me a question about the video if there's something that was unclear, write a quick summary statement about what you learned, or give me a critique and some advice for how I can help the people of next year. Also, don't forget to bring these notes back with you to class, because the way you get full credit is not only by watching the video online, but bringing the paper copy with you to class.